In this movie, we're going to learn about auto color, the auto color effect. And to do that, I've created this project called the Autos. And basically, we're going to use this same project for all of these auto movies: auto color, auto contrast, and auto levels, all of the auto effects in the color correction category of effects. And I have here this clip of Mount Rainier taken from Seattle. There's an obvious yellow tint to this, and also this is really lacking contrast and oomph. This is a really washed out, ugly piece of footage here. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through auto color and explain these parameters and also kind of compare it to auto contrast and auto levels and see some of the differences and also what they have in common here. Now I'm going to turn on basically a duplicate of this same layer with auto color applied with its default settings. So let me turn that on, and here's what we have. A much better representation of what we would like to see here. Basically what the auto color effect is doing, it's kind of like auto contrast and auto color at the same time. As we'll see in the next movie on auto contrast doesn't really play with the colors, it only affects the contrast. Auto color does both. You need to be aware that it takes the entire spectrum of brightness into consideration. It's going to try to find color and bring balance as far as luminance goes to shadows and midtones and highlights as well. Now, one of the things that auto contrast and auto color both do is that they map the brightest pixel in the image or in the footage to white, and they map the darkest pixel to black. Of course, they adjust the stuff in between, but it's good to know that this is done. A lot of times people will go into a piece of footage and they will use levels to manually do that same correction when you could just use auto contrast or auto color to do the same thing. Let's talk about some of these parameters here in the effect controls panel. If you are familiar with Photoshop, these are probably all seeming very common to you. The auto levels, auto contrast, and auto color are all in Photoshop. But there's a big difference. In Photoshop, you just apply the effect and you're done. But with After Effects, there's actually several parameters. So even if you're familiar with this in Photoshop, there's some new stuff here. Now, temporal smoothing is very interesting. Temporal means time. So what this is talking about is smoothing out the color correction over time. You see, what auto color's nature does is that it applies the effect to every single frame. And sometimes, because of the luminance adjustments per frame, there might be kind of like some hot spots or some weird areas where you might have like some flicker because auto color is not really maintaining a smooth relationship between frames. So as you increase temporal smoothing, it's going to smooth out the color so that there's not these huge adjustments from frame to frame. With black clip, it's basically saying how dark do the shadows go before they turn to black. And only the 1/10% is turned to black. If I were to take this and increase this, it would take more shadow values and turn them to pure black. I'm just going to right click and select reset there. And same thing with the white. As we increase this, it's going to take more of the highlights and take them to pure white. Now, Snap Neutral Midtones attempts to look for a neutral color and then turn that neutral color into neutral gray. And so in a way, this is kind of like removing a color cast. But sometimes when we do that, as I do it here, it kind of added actually a little bit too much red probably to our scene. I think the correct result was probably somewhere in between these two. Now we also have Blend with Original, and Blend with Original you'll see in tons of effects in After Effects, and basically this is opacity for the effect. So as I increase this, it's basically blending our auto-colored version with the original. I'm just going to go ahead and hit reset so we have the default look of auto color. And let's just turn on very quickly auto contrast to see the difference. So it definitely increased the contrast from the original, but it didn't touch the colors at all. Then there's also auto levels. Auto levels and auto color probably being the most similar here. So there's auto levels and there's auto color. Almost identical in this instance. Next, we'll take a look at auto contrast.